Well, it's been a long time, but I had to come back to count down my top 10 films of 2015. It's been a bizarre year, not quite as memorable as 2014 or 2013, but there have been a lot of great gems scattered all throughout. I'm going to start with some honorable mentions, and then we'll get to my top 10. I'll just jump right in with my number 15 spot that's actually available on Netflix right now, and that's the only reason I ever heard of it was because it is available on Netflix. It's called The Mend, and it was really something that I didn't even think much about or hadn't even really heard about. I just knew that Josh Lucas was the lead and that it was made by a new director, and it is my most surprisingly good movie of the year. It's really interesting and all over the place, and it's totally original and different. My number 14 is a movie that a lot of people didn't really care for this year, but I have seen 4 times now and I absolutely love it, and that's Avengers Age of Ultron. I'm a huge fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I think this movie did so much with that, and while it's, a little goofy and it's not as perfect or dialogue heavy as the original Avengers, I think it still works really well in a lot of different directions. It develops the characters, there's a lot of great action pieces, they bring in a lot of new stuff. It's great. My number 13 was actually my number 1 for a long time. While We're Young, Noah Baumbach's first movie that came out this year with Ben Stiller and Naomi Watts and Adam Driver. It's a great little movie about growing up and getting old, and I have it on DVD and I love it to death. My number 12 is the only really horror movie that I enjoyed from this year, It Follows, which was something totally different than I had ever seen. I'm not really big into horror movies, but the cinematography and the creativity, the concept really drew me to this, and I've seen it twice now, and it's a really very enjoyable movie, and it's not all that scary. The concept and the way it looks it's really creative and different. And my number 11, which I saw a couple days ago and was my number 10 for a small time, is Quentin Tarantino's The Hateful Eight, which is, I think, some of his better work. It's not some of his best, but I think it's right there in the middle. It's something that's undeniably Tarantino, but at the same time, it's totally a new concept that he's come up with. It works more like a play, and he has had ensembles before, but this one, they all kind of work together at the exact same time, and that's something that he's never done, and it's good to see that he's not rehashing the same old things anymore. But those are my honorable mentions. Those are the ones that didn't quite make it, but now let's get to my top 10. My number 10 is a movie that I actually watched yesterday for the first time, and I couldn't find it in theaters, so I actually had to find it on the internet. It's a movie called 45 Years, which is about old British people, and, that concept is just an immediate turnoff in every sense, but there's something so emotionally real about it, something that for some reason I could connect to, and it's got a great story. It's only an hour and a half long, but there's something about the performances and the way it's paced that just makes it so interesting and involving the whole time, and I was really surprised by how taken with it I was. My number 9 is one of the best movies of the year, Inside Out, it's great that animated movies are still this good. I'm glad Pixar's finally had a comeback after Cars 2 and Brave and I didn't even see those. And they haven't had a good movie since Toy Story 3. So it's really neat that they can come back with this huge conceptual, all over the place, brilliant psychological drama comedy that's made in such an accessible and colorful, fun way for kids to kind of grasp, and maybe those who are growing up are kind of understanding, how emotions should be in people that are developing and kind of figuring themselves out and how to respond to the world. And it's so much fun. It's hilarious, but at the same time, it's also incredibly real, and it's very sad. But it really is fantastic. My number 8 is Ex Machina, a movie about artificial intelligence. It stars Oscar Isaac, Donald Gleason, and Alicia Vikander, who is one of the new great actresses. She was in 6 movies this year or something, and this was her first year. She plays actually a robot who kind of manipulates her way into, well, I don't want to give anything away. The less you know about it, the better. It's a familiar concept, but it's told with such originality and sleek direction. It's an absolute joy to watch it. It's kind of spooky, actually. It was scary the second time I saw it, but it's a total knockout. My number 7 is a movie that I didn't think that I would enjoy nearly as much as I did, Brooklyn, that revolves around Saoirse Ronan, who plays an Irish immigrant in the 1950s who kind of grapples with what she misses about home and tries to accept the new New York and all the people surrounding it. There's a love story, and it's all about self and your place in the world, and it avoids every possible cliche that could come with that story that's already so cliched. And Saoirse Ronan is so fantastic in it, and it's because this is like kind of how her parents lived, and it's so real for her, and you really see that. But anyway, it functions so well and is so interesting through the whole thing. I would absolutely recommend it. My number 6 is Room, which stars Brie Larson and little Jacob Tremblay, who is like 6 years old or something, gives his first performance. Brie Larson, I've been watching, her in Short Term 12, and I think that's when she first broke out. But this is her year. Hopefully, she'll win an Oscar for it. There's such like emotional power in this movie, and an unconventional story that's done in such a personal and loving way that oh man, it gets me emotional just thinking about it. I don't want to again. I don't want to give too much away because I tried to go in knowing as little as possible, and I wouldn't even watch a trailer for it. You should just know that it's very intense emotionally and dramatically, and that overall it really surprised me, and it didn't really hit me until I was on my way home thinking about it, and I still think about it, and it's a great movie. My number 5 is Me and Earl and the Dying Girl, which I actually had to see twice because the first time I saw it, I was distracted by comparing it to the book, which it was different from, and that kind of threw me off. But then I watched it for a second time, and I watched it just as a movie, not as an adaptation, and it totally blew me away by how, again, emotional and involving it is, and quirky to the point of it not being irritating. Like, things go too far with that, and it makes it, unapproachable. But it deals with real, almost unlikable characters and real life situations, and it has sort of a personal thing because the characters love film and they make their own things, and there's just a lot of really, really creative and different aspects that work into it. It won Best Picture at Sundance, and I totally see why. It won't get the kind of awards traction that Whiplash or Winter Bone did, but it is truly original, and the kids in it are my age. The people in it are fantastic actors, and it really holds up to the source material, and it's a really fantastic, different movie. My number 4 is the most likely next Best Picture winner, Spotlight, which I again didn't think I would enjoy as much as I did. It's a procedural drama, but it has such focus, and the subject matter it tackles could easily be laced with so many vulgarities and in a snide, condescending way that would make people look bad, but it doesn't at all. It's told with the most pure purposefulness, but with such emotion to it, and the performances from Michael Keaton and Mark Ruffalo and everybody are truly fantastic. And it's if you can take a subject matter like that's more procedural and not as interesting, and put it in a way that's so fascinating. The pacing of it never slows down, and that's such a difficult task for such a potentially boring topic. I mean, that's a really impressive thing for Tom McCarthy, the director, did. I'd highly recommend it, and try to see it before it gets all the Oscar nominations and wins that it most likely will get. My number 3 is Youth, directed by Paolo Sorrento, who, as you can probably tell by his name, this was his first English-speaking film. He's an Italian guy who his other film won Best Foreign Film a couple of years ago. It stars Michael Caine, Harvey Keitel, Jane Fonda, so it's about old rich people who kind of look back on the successes and the failures of their lives and what they've learned from their loves and losses and stuff. And it sounds sort of cliche, but it breaks that by the visual storytelling mode that it takes. It's something so colorful and bright and sharp, and yet it's talking about something that's kind of almost not vulgar, but something that is very unpleasant to think about growing old and becoming lonely and having this sense of dissatisfaction. And that's sort of a cliche trope as well, but the way that it carries itself, and they communicate with the younger characters, and what everybody kind of learns from their experiences in this communal hotel thing that they stay at up in Switzerland is something that I haven't seen before done like this, and especially because of the way that it looks so sharp and colorful, and it's a truly phenomenal thing, and I haven't seen anything like it. I could go back and watch it right now, and I probably will eventually. My number 2 of the year is written by the all-powerful Aaron Sorkin, directed by Danny Boyle, Steve Jobs, which is a movie that I, again, only really went in for the Aaron Sorkin script. I didn't know anything about Steve Jobs, and I think I'm the only one, and I kind of did that purposefully so that when I first heard about it, it could be through the script of Aaron Sorkin, who delivers this kinetic, no holds barred, constant punching on all angles story about Michael Fassbender's character Steve Jobs, who is so flawed and so self-absorbed and doesn't know how to communicate, but is still so important and incredible at what he does. And the script balances that fast-paced way of that he deals with people, but also the sensitive inward how he deals with his daughter and the fact that he's adopted and his father figure John Scully and how he deals with all these people and how he juggles all the relationships that he has and all the tasks that he has to manage. And it all takes place in 3 acts before an unveiling of an Apple product. And that sounds like a really tedious concept, but somehow through the combination of Danny Boyle's directing and Sorkin's script, it never feels bogged down by its content. And Michael Fassbender gives probably the best leading actor performance of the year, totally embodying this person. It never felt like I was watching an SNL imitation. It totally felt like I was watching Steve Jobs order people around and kind of be hurt and angry and inspired. And it's an absolutely invigorating movie, and I'd absolutely recommend it. Number 1 movie of this year is probably one you've probably heard me talk about if you follow me on anything. It's Noah Baumbach's Mistress America, which he also directed Frances Ha, which is one of my favorite movies, and it's written by Greta Gerwig, who was also in it, and also in Frances Ha. It totally nails so much about the college experience and having a fondness for somebody and giving them importance and what friendship is and what pursuing something right is and camaraderie and learning how to write and become your own person. It tackles so many themes so perfectly, and also is one of the funniest movies of the year. The 2 lead, Greta Gerwig and Lola Kirk, bounce off each other in such different kinetic performances that they're just so much fun to watch, and they have so much to say. And there's rarely a movie that has such profound things to say. It can say them kind of quietly and quickly in a way you haven't heard them before, in a very exciting, fresh, and relatable way that never feels like it's pandering or cliche. It's something totally new, and I've seen it a couple times now, and it never wears out. It never goes over its runtime. It's just a perfectly pitched movie that I wouldn't change a thing about it. It's not as intelligent or heady as Frances Ha, but it wasn't trying to be. It was trying to be something more approachable that audiences could get into. It's on Redbox now, and I'd absolutely recommend you go find it. It probably won't get any Academy Award nominations. It's just not that big, but if I had a say in it, I would give it a lot. It's an absolutely fantastic movie, and I'd totally recommend it. All right, so that's it. Those are my top films of 2015. I don't think I'll be doing anything else on here. Maybe next year. I think I'm going to put out a montage of the films of this year. Unless you guys want something more, you probably don't. This has been Murphy on Movies, and I'll see you next time.